Good morning, students. I am Nidhi S. Bagalwadi, your science teacher, Sankalp Learning Solutions. In the last class, we started with the new concept that is reproduction. How do organisms reproduce was the chapter. So, in the last class, we learned regarding the definition of reproduction, what is the importance of reproduction, as well as the types of reproduction, that is asexual and sexual. We learn in detail regarding the sexual reproduction. We learn many types of sexual reproduction such as binary fission, multiple fission, budding, fragmentation, regeneration, etc. Today we are going to deal with the concept of sexual reproduction. As you all know that the sexual reproduction means there will be a fusion of gametes, guys. So there will be a fusion of gametes and the offsprings will be from two parents. The offsprings will be from two parents, right? Yeah, fine. So in sexual reproduction, we are going to discuss first regarding reproduction in flowering plants. So in flowering plants, the reproduction occurs sexually. So we know for that we have to know the male part of the flower, female part of the flower and all. So we know that the plant body is divided into two, vegetative body and the reproductive body. Vegetative body means here we will get stem, leaves, branches, roots. So these all are the parts of vegetative body of a plant. When we come to the reproductive part, so the petals, or we can say the flower, stamens, ovary, stigma. So these all are the parts of the reproductive part. So flower is a reproductive part of a plant. And when we consider the structure of a flower over here, fine. So it will be consisting of the petals, okay, and the first one it is called as pedicel. The stalk of a flower is called pedicel, and this one swollen region is called thalamus, or we can call it as receptacle. Then the leafy like structure, these are called as calyx. These are usually called calyx. Individually, these are called as sepal. Okay, so single it is called sepal, group is called calyx. Then we will be having the colorful part, which is nothing but a petal, or we can say corolla. Then we will be having it will be having the stamens, which are the male reproductive parts. So which are the male reproductive parts of a flower of a plant? It is nothing but a stamen. Stamen is again having the anther and filament. Okay, then the flowers will be having the female reproductive part, which is called, the whole thing is called as pistil. Pistil has three parts again: stigma, style and ovary. Okay, some of the flowers will be having male and female part both in them. So such flowers are called as bisexual flowers. Bisexual means they will be having both the sex, or we can say the reproductive parts of a both reproductive parts of a male and female. So some flowers will be having only one reproductive part, either male or female. Such flowers are called as unisexual, single sexual flowers. Okay, unisexual and bisexual flowers. Next, the first step in sexual reproduction in plants is pollination. So what do you mean by pollination? As the name indicates, pollination means it is related to the pollen grains. Okay, so the transfer of pollen grains to the, as we know that pollen grains are the male part of the body, or we can say male germ cells, okay, of the plant. Okay, when these pollen grains attach to a stigma, okay, comes to the, or the transfer of pollen grains to the stigma or the female reproductive part of a flower is called as pollination. So pollination occurs by insects, by the natural agents like wind, or by the water, or by the humans, or by the birds, etc. So these all are called as pollinating agents. And pollination occurs by two methods. Either it occurs by self-pollination, or it occurs by cross-pollination. Self means what? Us, within. Okay, if this is a flower, okay, and this is a ovary part, this is a stigma of a flower, and this is an anther of a flower. Just a minute. Fine. This is the anther of a flower. This is the stigma of a flower. The transfer of pollen grains from the flower to the stigma of its own flower, of the own flower, of the same flower is called as transfer of pollen grains to the stigma of the same flower is called self-pollination. And the transfer of the pollen grains to the stigma of other flower, to the stigma of other flower of the same plant, means if it is a rose flower, the transfer of pollen grain should take place to the other rose flower only, not for hibiscus, not for sunflower and all. Okay, of the same species. The transfer of pollen grains from one flower to the stigma of other flower of the same species is called as cross pollination. So the first step in sexual reproduction in plants is nothing but pollination. That is, self and cross are the types of pollination, right? The next step is fertilization. So what do you mean by fertilization? It is nothing but the fusion of gametes, fusion of male gamete with the female gamete. So once the pollen grain reaches the stigma, it will stick to the stigma, as the stigma will be having certain chemical substances, adhesive substances, so that it can stick. And by absorbing the moisture, by absorbing the water which is present on the stigma, the pollen germinates to form a tube which is called as pollen tube. So this whole what you are seeing now, this is nothing but a pollen tube. So the pollen tube elongates, it grows, and then it reaches the ovary. Ovary is nothing but female reproductive part of a plant. So the pollen tube passes through the style and reaches the ovary. So in the ovary, there will be a fusion of male gamete with the female gamete. Male gamete, that is male germ cell, with the female germ cell. When they fuse, they form a zygote. This process is called as fertilization. This process is called fertilization. Then after fertilization, what happens? Whatever the zygote is formed here, it divides, the zygote, whatever it formed, it divides into several times. Okay, several times, and it looks like a ball of mass of a cell, which is called as embryo, which is called as embryo. This embryo then develops into seed. This embryo then develops into seed. Okay, and the ovary part develops into the fruit. The ovary part develops into the fruit. The ovule part or the embryo develops into the seed. So this is how fertilization occurs in case of plants. So in plants, we have two terms. The first one is double fertilization and triple fusion. What is the meaning of double fertilization? So here what happens, a pollen grain, the male nucleus will come, male germ nucleus will come, and one male nucleus will combine with the egg of a female or the ova of a female, and another male nucleus will be there, that is a male germ cell. It combines, okay, it fuses with the two polar nuclei. As you can see, the polar nuclei, two polar nuclei will be present. So they combine with the two polar nuclei. So here three fusion takes place. One male sperm fuses with the ova, one other male sperm, the other two male sperms fuses with the two polar nuclei. So as three fusion takes place, we will call it as triple fusion. As two times fusion, as the fertilization takes place. So for example, here what happens, one male sperm combines with the ova, that is the first fusion. The other male nucleus or the male sperm combines with two polar nuclei. One only combines with two polar nuclei. Okay, so when it combines with the two polar nuclei and one, so there will be triple fusion, three fusion we can call, three fusion. Double fertilization means what? Two times fusion of gamete occurred. Just a minute. Two times gamete fusion occurred. So I will repeat it once again. Look here. So one pollen tube will be there. Okay, inside one pollen tube. So when it germinates and forms the male pollen tube, so inside it, they will be having many male germ cells. So let us consider two male germ cells are there. So among two male germ cell, one male germ cell or a sperm combines with the ova, or a egg of a female. the other male nucleus or a germ cell combines with the two polar nuclei. Two other cells which are present along with the ova are polar nuclei. So here what happens? Two polar nuclei combines with one male nucleus. So total three, right? So this is called triple fusion. And as fusion of male sperm occurs twice, one with ova, one with the polar nuclei, it is called as double fertilization. Very, very important concept in case of sexual reproduction in plants. So this is regarding how the reproduction takes place in the plants. In the upcoming session, we are going to learn regarding the sexual reproduction in human beings. Until that, take care. Have a nice day. Bye.